ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's live stream. I am joined by our Deputy Leader, Phil Holden. Tonight, we've got all sorts of things to discuss. As usual, we've got a few aspects of Donald Trump's inauguration. What does the future hold there? Again, Phil's going to bring us a bit of an update on AI developments and Trump coin and various other things as well. Welcome, Phil. And,
good evening.
Yeah, fire the comments, everyone watching as well. We're trying to look at some comments. I've delivered my last leaflets today for the by-election in Collington and Fairmile Head. This is my final one. So I made this one a bit about the other parties. Have I told you the story about while we're having yet another by-election in this ward? A Lib Dem got elected, declaring herself the local candidate. I'm the only one who really lives here, she was saying. Then she got elected, and then the next day her house was up for sale and she was moving to Dubai or something, which was just utterly bizarre. Waste of £80,000 of council taxpayers' money to run the election. And then she left straight away. So if the Lib Dems win again, you think, what is the electorate thinking? So I pointed out on a leaflet as well that the Labour leader of Edinburgh City Council resigned quite recently when he was sending texts of a sexual nature to Ukrainian refugees. All the reports in the media just said Ukrainian refugees. It was ambiguous, but I do know actually it was when you hear Ukrainian refugees, you think women, don't you? The bloke stayed there, the women came as refugees. That's why Humza Yousaf met them and said, "Where are all the men?" But this was actually males he was sending them to, which I assume would be sons, so they would be quite young as well. So that, I mean, what an embarrassment to Edinburgh! What a disgrace to the city that's what happens with the leader. Will that influence people's votes? Sadly, I think most people won't know, maybe even won't care in any case. So anyway, my little experiments, I've intensively leafleted one particular area of the ward as a little experiment. So we'll see how that's worked out next week. Right, what else has been going on? Listen to the radio sometimes in the car. Radio 4, it's just so biased, it's untrue. But I caught a little snippet of Woman's Hour, which is surely one of the worst programs on there. And they were talking about the hostage swaps, prisoner exchanges in Gaza and Israel. And they were saying, why is it that the women and children have been released first? Okay, and the reason is, I suspect, that this is like chivalrous tradition. That normally women and children first, that would be a priority, would we get the women and children out, and then after they're going to look at the men. So I think that would just be like a traditional chivalrous priorities. So one of the women asked another woman on Woman's Hour, why do you think that is? That they've let the women out first before the men? What do you think the other person said, Phil? Take a guess.
It's just going to be it's sexist, or it's what? So
she completely ignored the question. She's like refused to engage with the question. So she waffled about something totally unrelated to the point that had been made. Like she refused to acknowledge that actually there was anything to say anything about. Interesting one that. I sometimes think chivalry or traditional ideas, the idea was, you took women like royalty almost. They have special care and protection and honor, whatever. It's a real special duty of men to look after women. So the feminists said, oh, we don't want that. That's really terrible. That's sexist. Then what do they want to now? Like the violence against women and girls type thing. It's almost as though they're wanting to restore that by saying violence against women and girls, that's much worse than other sorts of violence. So they've torn this thing down, and now they're trying to sort of recreate it in with a different logo on it. Maybe it's quite odd what's going on there. Now, what else? We've had Trump's inauguration. Main thing that stood out for me in the speech was his desire for territorial expansion for the United States of America. Does that concern you, Phil?
I found that very kind of interesting. You know, I mean, to see him, I don't know if he's billed it as territorial expansion, but
that's his word. That's the quote.
That is his words. Yeah. Well, his first that seemed to start with Greenland, and him saying that was needed for defense. And, geopolitically, you can kind of see maybe some of his point there in that, Russian ships can go between Greenland and Canada and things like that.
But hang on. That's no argument whatsoever for threatening to invade somewhere. You can't say
he was asking to buy it.
This,
so that's a bit different, I think, than threatening to invade it. He was saying like, we'll buy it and the Denmark will come round. So
did you see the interview where he was asked, would you rule out using military action to take it? And he said no.
I think I maybe heard that, and with Canada, calling Trudeau the governor of Canada, and it seems like his posturing there is basically that Canada isn't paying for defence or isn't paying what it needs to in defence, and therefore the United States is obliged to defend Canada, because if they were attacked from the north, then the United States would be in trouble. So if the United States don't provide defence for Canada, then their defence is weakened. And so he's, I think, making the point that Canada has sort of been not paying its fair share there. And so he's saying basically, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to be governed by the Russians or the United States? If we didn't defend you, then, Russian expansion could mean that you're taken over by Russia. So he's saying, like, since you can't defend yourself, either you start defending yourselves or we need to take you over so that we can defend ourselves.
I think you've been quite the Trump-splainer there. What you're saying there is perfectly reasonable, but that's not what Trump's been saying. Do I think Trump will invade Greenland? I don't think there's any. I really don't think he would do that. If they want Greenland, there's only something like 56,000 inhabitants. Offer them all $1 million.
Yeah, it's clear that the people in Greenland are fed up of Denmark, and I listened to a YouTuber going out to Denmark to Greenland and just interviewing people there and saying, "What do you think of this?" And pretty much on both sides, they didn't want to be, pretty much they didn't want to be part of the United States. A few did; they thought it'd be great, but most seemed to not want that. There was even more anti-Denmark sentiment, saying like generally Denmark's not providing us enough, and you can imagine what that might be like as a territory. That you're not getting the money that you think you kind of want or you deserve, and then somebody else steps in and says like, I'd like to buy you. That's at least a bargaining chip, and so they haven't like outright said, "Oh, this is completely out of the question." It's like, "Oh, let's have a chat with Trump and see what he's saying," kind of thing.
The thing with buying it is they would buy it, I assume. Who would they buy it from? From Denmark or from the people of Greenland?
So one of the things Trump said is does Denmark even have a right to Greenland? But he's also saying he's going to buy it from Denmark.
This is the classic
by saying
thing
he'd buy it from them, he seems to be admitting that they might own it.
This is the classic thing that leaders intent on territorial expansion. This is the sort of punch they make. They don't normally say, right, we want the country next door, we're more powerful, we're going to invade them, and then it's ours. It's always, there's something historical, and there's a bit of a grey area. So it's not as clear cut as it needs. So we've really got a bit of a case, but that's always the case.
So the state for Greenland is that they are kind of owned by Denmark, but like Scotland, they could vote for independence. And I think they just need to bring that forward from their parliament. And there's an opportunity for doing that in the near future. And so they could effectively vote for independence, as it were, and be joined to the United States democratically.
But in that case,
there's scope for that.
Isn't Trump playing this really badly then? Shouldn't his pitch be, "Hey, people of Greenland, we think you're really great. We will offer you a fantastic deal to enter
Yeah.
into an ever closer relationship. Would that not have been the best
I
pitch?
mean, that's certainly what he might try,
You sort of undermine yourself when you say, we might invade you, we might take military action. Can't rule that out.
So I think the question for Greenland is, like, can they defend themselves? Can they be independent of? I mean, they can't be independent of both Denmark and the United States, I don't think, very easily, because they're a country that needs to be subsidized. So it's sort of a case of probably choosing one or the other, or an alliance, which is, everything is ownership in everything but name kind of thing, So, yeah. But the people of Denmark seem to be saying, lots of them seem to be saying, for no amount of money, if we were given so much per person, particularly the young people seem to be saying, no, I wouldn't be interested in that. The older people, and this was just like they're asking about 20 people out in the cold.
I think they actually would be, if there was like a couple of £1,000 going. If the money was actually dangling in front of them, I think. I don't.
They were talking about 100, like 100,000 per person or something like that.
It is basically a massive wasteland, isn't it?
Well, I'm sure, like the wealth which is there in terms of natural resources and things like that is probably substantial, as well as the military reasons and things like that, So,
do you not think overall though that the things he's saying, like coming in as American president, saying you're intent on territorial expansion? I mean, this seems to me like it's just like sounding like Putin, or it's like sounding like China. The little countries around us, we're quite fancy swallowing some of them up, and that's what we're. So if you're one of these countries,
for Canada, it depends on his motive in terms of, like, does he genuinely want to absorb Canada, or is he saying that to point out that, look, you can't really call yourself an independent country because you can't defend yourself. You're sponging off us, and if you want to do that, you should become a part of us. And if you want to remain independent, then you should start spending some money on defense.
That sounds perfectly reasonable, but that's not what he's been saying.
No, but like his approach in every negotiation is to come in with the, to play all your cards at the beginning and say, this is what I can do. And then to step back from that. And he's done that with TikTok as well. So
yeah, but do you not agree though that it's completely wrong to be making? I mean, this is sort of amounting to threats, even if it is just even as part of a bargaining strategy. You can't threaten things like that. But
so,
that's like what we look at countries in the world that do that. We think, right, that's wrong. They can't do that. You can't just look at the small countries around you and think, yeah, I quite fancy those.
I think what Trump tends to do is say, these are the cards that I have, in terms of, like, his skill seems to be negotiation and knowing the value of say what America holds, and therefore what they can get on that basis or something like that. And so there seemed to be, like, I think in his term where we saw no wars and things like that, I'm sure he was negotiating strongly to sort of prevent wars and saying, if you do this, then this is what we'll do. And, he said that for Putin and others and things like that. He said, like, Ukraine wouldn't have happened on my watch. He said straight away, this is what I said to Putin, you go near Ukraine and this is what will happen. He said that at the start of his term, and nothing happened for his whole term, and there might be some truth in what he's saying there as well. We see with Israel, he says, before I get in office, this conflict needs to end, and you see, like, the day before he gets into office, the hostages released and all those kind of things. Now, I don't know what the things are that are being said behind the scenes, but he was, I would guess, clearly threatening something if this wasn't sorted out by the time he was in office. because
Okay,
everyone moved.
coming back to my central point, but I'll try one more time.
Okay.
Do you not think the fact that Trump has said he wants territorial expansion, and he said he's refused to rule out military action, basically in order to take Greenland, Panama Canal, I mean Canada, it would seem too ridiculous to even think about. But if you were in Canada, it would just make you wonder very slightly. I just think
on face value, I'd say that's completely wrong. You know,
right. Uh-huh.
But I don't necessarily think that what he's doing is at face value, but I think it also might be, you know, and that that would come down to part of my faith in terms of, you know, the Bible speaks about consolidation of nations. You know,
I would say it's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
You can't come in like threatening neighbours. What concerns me, what really concerns me, is that some people they're like Trump on gender, like what he says about gender. They like what he says about this, that, and the other. Therefore, when he talks issues, well, sort of not particularly veiled threats, raising the possibility of invading neighbouring countries, as if some people say, well, yeah, but I like him on transgender things. The same as some people with Putin. Putin, have you heard him talking about gender and family? Oh, Putin's spot on. Great, he's my guy. So if he goes and invades the country next door, well, he can't be that bad, can he? Because he's right on transgender thing. I find it really concerning that the people seem to be able to overlook really serious evil, if you like. I mean, countries shouldn't be threatening to invade each other, but some people say that, you know, you can overlook it because Trump's, you know, you like some other things about him. I just don't get that. That's quite worrying, I find. It's as though it's like the personality, the person takes precedence over principles. Like, I am for Trump. I like Trump. Therefore, whatever he does, I'm going to just do all sorts of contortions to defend it and say, well, it must be sort of okay because I like Trump. That's I think quite concerning. I mean, lots of the things he says I think are great. If he does lots of things he said he's going to do, brilliant.
I think in terms of his gestures, you know, like 100% tariffs on trade from China and all these kind of things, that I think a lot of that is playing his cards, you know, and saying this is what we can do, and very often he comes to a different agreement or a different arrangement in the end, you know.
Yeah. So there are probably countries that would queue up to be the 51st state, indeed, and they're very welcome to do that. America could welcome in, if it wanted to, countries that wanted to join the United States.
He said to Britain, didn't he? He said, choose whether you're with Europe or whether you're with the States. He issued that kind of ultimatum to Kier.
Yeah. So welcoming in countries is fine. Sort of issuing sort of threats to invade them, not so good.
What do you think about the Panama Canal? How can he do something with the Panama Canal without getting the places in between?
Well, I'm sure they could launch some sort of assault so that they could take it. But again, it's the idea that, you know, we should never have given it to them. Like, go back in history. I mean, we tend to forget, like when Hitler went invading other countries, it didn't normally say, oh, I just fancy it. We'd always claim that there's some historic injustice. There's some German people there who are not being treated very well or whatever. There'd always be something. There would be some reason why you want to do it. But the rules-based order, if you like, for international affairs is, doesn't matter what's gone on in the past, you don't go violating the territorial integrity of other countries. That's just a really fun. So when someone actually breaks that rule, like Russia, for example, that should be a really, really big deal. And the international community should round on that and absolutely stamp on it and condemn it.
What I find slightly amusing, though, is that, you know, during Obama's time in power, you know, people like Alex Jones were kind of warning of the North American Union, like an EU kind of union that was going to be pushed through and all that kind of stuff, and how it was secretively, you know, being formed behind the scenes. And then, like, you know, day one with Trump, or once he's got the nomination, when he's president-elect, he starts talking about, you know, basically that, you know, but rather than being this shadowy thing, it's just like, this is what we're going to do, you know. Yeah.
Who built the Panama Canal? I would say to that, to anyone, I would say, well, who built your house? Does that mean that person's got the right to come and take it back? You see, this is always the way people justify aggression, is that they always claim that there's some historical peculiarity. It's not quite fair. Like if Norway invaded the Shetland Isles, say, they could say, oh, well, you know, it wasn't quite fair the way that we gave them to you. You know, there was some misunderstanding. The people were against whatever, you know, so they should never have been given to you. So we're going to invade them and take them back. I mean, it's just not on. Again, I just find it concerning that anyone would want to be trying to defend Trump, because they like other things, he says. They'll try and defend this. But something else from America while we're on the thing, the pardons being issued. Like Biden pardoning his whole family just in case. Yeah. And Trump's been pardoning people left, right, and center. It's almost as though it's not just a change in president, it's like changing country. It's almost like being taken over by a different power, if you like. The institutions. I think, again, it's
and from the media point of view, you know, when you look at TikTok and you look at so all the tech people are there at the inauguration, from Jeff Bezos kind of owning the Washington Post, Elon Musk owning X, Mark Zuckerberg owning Facebook. Most of them gave $1 million to the inauguration kind of fund and things like that. And in each of them, you're seeing movements like for the Washington Post, I think the cartoonist was complaining that she wasn't allowed to publish her normal. I think she had maybe all of the tech bros bowing down to either Trump or Musk or something like that, you know, and she wasn't allowed to publish the cartoon or something like that, you know. And so a complete swing from nearly all these people, from upholding the sort of woke transgenderism and all those kind of things, to completely the opposite direction now. Freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know, and it showed that they had absolutely no conviction in what they were, you know, pushing on their platforms before. It was just
but I totally believe, I believed that before as well. I thought these people don't really believe that. This is just what they think is the best thing for business at the moment. The vast majority of businesses will do and say what they think is going to make more money. And in previous years, previous administrations, going down that sort of censorship route was what worked. I would just love to know what's gone on behind the scenes. I mean, for goodness sake, what's Trump threatened them with? To just have this total change in direction.
That would be the sort of, you know, an investigation into Facebook over probably things like Hunter Biden laptop and
fair enough, yeah.
all the other things that have happened. And so he, you know, that potentially, and you know, the perhaps money given in the election in some of the so Facebook in the previous election, they arranged, like, it's pretty similar to what Musk was doing actually with Trump and things like that, you know. It was meant to be a neutral thing, but it was getting people to vote and fielding people's votes in Democrat areas and things like that, you know. And so I think that there were some underhand things from Facebook, from Twitter in previous elections. And if there was an investigation into that, that could result in severe penalties. And so, you know, Trump's negotiation is basically become a mouthpiece for me. You won't have an investigation.
Well, is he wanting that, or is he just wanting them to go neutral? Well,
I think, yeah, on the face of it, it's to go neutral, you know. But actually, I think it sort of means that, yeah, I mean, the swing to the right will be massive. And yeah, I feel that the mainstream media completely lost their credibility in the kind of run up to the election. You know, the things they were bringing against Trump and things like that, a lot of them lacked credibility in what they were doing there. And so they now aren't in a strong position to challenge him because they've pushed lots of things that are quite dubious and things like that. And so you've got a problem now in that the media's probably swung 180 degrees the other way, in that the important channels are the digital channels, and Trump's in with all of these now. So Facebook, he's talking about getting a 50% stake in TikTok of the United States, essentially owning half of it. Musk is on side with X. And so,
but Musk being on side with X, I think X is now just neutral, isn't it? Would you say?
It's hard to say. Like in terms of like from my feeds and things, I think it's got neutral policies, but it's got a in terms of the content that you get, maybe it's 50-50.
I would tend to say on X, but if you, I've said this before, particularly if you go to the For You bit, I just get a lot of pretty way out sort of right-wing conspiracy stuff,
America-centric kind of stuff.
But maybe if my track record was being like a really progressive, liberal-minded person, maybe the same would be happening there. I'd go to the For Me bit, and it would just be really extreme left-wing content that it would be pushing out. I don't know. I mean, have they just worked out this is what interests people?
I feel for X, that I kind of tend to be just getting, because the algorithm favors things that get a lot of views, then it tends to push it towards you getting international news from the the country with the largest, loudest population. And so, I'm feeling a bit of a right-wing echo chamber on there. I'm
finding X out of it. It's quite hard to find, particularly about Scottish politics. It's quite hard to find anything resembling sensible conversation.
It's sort of like, I think, because you can do your For You feed or your personal feed of the people you've subscribed to, but it's almost like people aren't bothering to post because posts about Scotland don't take off or don't travel very far. It almost feels like I quite like a city-wide social media thing or a country-wide thing or something like that, because it feels like Scotland's drowned out, or
I suppose what I could do, I mean, to be fair, to take some responsibility, I could go to X, I could cut out Elon Musk and whatever. So I could change, if I just wanted to hear more from Scotland and UK. I think at the moment, like UK is completely obliterating Scottish politics as well. Since we've had the Labour government, the social media attention is very much on the UK rather than on Scotland.
Scotland's just keeping quiet, I think.
It's the SNP's boring strategy. It's very effective. It's attention is all elsewhere. Just going back to the pardons, I just don't like the idea of. I think the January 6th thing, I think it was blown out of all proportion. But people were breaking the law, so they probably were punished too harshly. So it probably hasn't got the option of reducing sentences or anything. So his pardon them can sort of get that. What Biden's done just seems unforgivable, really. But
I think they deleted all the records as well, like according to Trump, to do with the procedure of what the evidence was against these people or something like that. So there was no way to kind of go back through it and review it properly. Which is, it was completely partisan the way that was handled, and we saw the justice system completely weaponized, and we've seen, the pardon thing completely abused as well.
But it's a bad development in a country where you get this sort of thing where like the sort of justice system is manipulated to this extent. Like we've just been saying about the social media. Like they've totally flipped, well, not totally flipped, but a massive change in their attitude and ethos because the president's changed. I mean, you would hope ideally that they would carry on doing the same thing all the way through. Change of president shouldn't actually make any difference to that. Okay, maybe the difference is a positive difference this time, but ideally, you'd want a lot of things, or the way the justice system, you want these things to be carrying on regardless, with a change of government, a change of administration. So, but it seems like more and more things are getting sucked into it.
A vote for Trump was a vote saying that the justice system was corrupt, because in order to vote for Trump, you had to kind of not care that he had a criminal record. And so of the more than half the people that voted for him, they, I guess, were saying that his conviction was, unfair or politically motivated in the way that they voted for him. And so the worrying thing there is that you've got a country that has lost faith in its justice system. And we see the same thing in the UK as well, where it appears that the justice system is somewhat weaponized for political ends. Yeah.
Couple. I like to. Here's my prediction. You can all forget. Once I've said this, just forget about it, and you only need to remember it if it happens. When I'll take this clip and play
in
it to
4
you.
years' time.
Yeah. I can imagine Musk falling out with Trump and falling out with everyone. I think he's an unusual character, and he's maybe a bit quick on the trigger, and maybe something will go wrong at some point, and they'll fall out. I think there's a lot of possibility for that in Trump's with the people around Trump. But I think with Musk in particular, I think he's an unusual character, and I can imagine things could go pear-shaped one way or another on that front. What do you think?
I think it's possible. I mean, they both strike me as people with kind of big egos, but also, both of them have been able to build. So Musk has been able to hold together big companies, and I don't think there's been super massive falling outs yet. People have certainly left those companies, but he's proven that he can manage massive amounts of people.
It seems to me though that maybe his method. I heard someone saying the other day that was it their wedding day or something, or I don't know, something like completely outrageous. They assisted someone, like he phoned someone up and said, "Right, we need you in here now." And it was like they got a funeral, or it was their wedding day or something. And they said, you've got to be in now or you're fired.
Yeah.
So you hear these sort of stories. So to what extent has he run things on that sort of basis? That people want to work there because there's a lot of money. So maybe
I think people want to work there because they want to achieve something as well. And so people going into it know it's going to be super hard. And this was like, I was listening to a podcast by, it's like an interview. It was either Oxford or Cambridge with Dominic Cummings, and he was talking about the problems in the civil service basically, and he was saying that the civil service ends up with people who are not risk takers, and it promotes people who never rock the boat kind of thing. And the result of that is that all the risk takers and all the people with bright ideas and things like that leave and go into industry, take big risks, make lots of money. And what you're left with in the civil service is something that serves its own ends and protects its own leaders and things like that, and I think that possibly in the States, that's what you're saying, is that there are people who go into Tesla, go into these companies, but they kind of know that's the deal of going in there.
I suppose it's like that was the traditional image of the stock market, wasn't it? In London, you go and work there, they absolutely like work you to death, be very stressful. They make you ill, you'll age at double the normal rate, but you can retire early and you'll have made lots of money, and that's fine. There's I think for a lot of people that's a good deal. Just going back to Trump, I would say I always warn people. I don't think it's a good idea to really associate yourself with political figures in other countries, because I don't see what you gain from it, but there's quite a bit you can lose from it potentially. So I think if anyone aligns themselves like, I'm a Donald Trump man, then I just think that's a very risky thing, because I mean, who knows what he's going to do in this term? And there's bound to be things that he'll do that you'll think, oh, well, I wasn't so keen on that one or whatever. So I think, to say that you like his policies or whatever, fair enough. But to actually express allegiance to him or to identify with him, I don't think that's a good idea. To identify with any politician from another country, I don't see what there is to gain from that.
Yeah, I mean, for Trump, I think I can't do, and I don't know if there are any politicians abroad that I'd say I'm fully aligned with what they're thinking, but I think there are individual policies that you can say that's good and that's bold and that's that's needed. I'm glad somebody's saying that.
Yeah. Maloney. When she was elected, virtually everything I heard from her, I thought, that sounds great. And we put things out of the family party saying it's great to have someone with these views or whatever. But there have been a few things since that some people say they've been it's in everybody's politics, isn't it? Some people have been disappointed with this, that, and the other. So, I think it's best to criticize, observe, praise, whatever. But I think actually aligning with, I think it isn't so helpful in many
I think
cases.
The thing that for the left wing governments, that in some sense they're not in the short term they're not super dangerous because they're going to be very inefficient at what they do. There's often not a huge level in competence. Kind of running the country and things like that, I think for the administration in the United States, there's very bold things that they're trying to do, and there's a chance that they'll achieve some of them, with people like Musk, if they've got the tech people on board and things like that. There's so many kind of revolutionary technologies which are there at this time, things like that, that it can really change government and change the way that things work. And I think there's a big question over whether that's going to be good or not. But I couldn't see those kind of bold things happening under probably a left-wing government or something like that.
No. Keir Starmer says he's going to have a.
Yeah, but he didn't convince me. He sounded so weak when he. When he said that, about the AI, getting the AI stuff in. But Elon Musk is going in to set up the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And left-wing governments, they create a big state. They create lots of committees and lots of, in the UK, quangos. And, we'd have all these charities set up. And, the government embeds itself in the civil service, so that when the right-wing government comes in, they can't do anything, because they can't get permission to do it. I think
it's only one way. It certainly seems one way round, though, doesn't it? It seems like the left-wing government, well, in Britain in any case, the Labour government is great at doing things that mean when a Conservative government comes in, their hands are tied. Like they introduce Equality Act, human rights legislation. They say set up all these charities, hand over authority to various quangos. They're experts in it. I've taken over institutions. Then the Conservatives have just been useless at it. It seems to be that they just sort of vaguely complain about it, and then
useless at getting rid of them. And that's like Liz Truss' interview was quite interesting. I think it was Liz Truss or Dominic Cummings. They're basically saying every time you hear the word independent, they said that's something that kind of, when they got into government, they found out everything was independent and they had no power, So Dominic Cummings said that the cabinet meetings were completely scripted. That when somebody got into the meeting, there was a written words that everyone would say, the order in which they would say them be said, and they basically just needed to read off these things which were on scripts, and these were basically things handed to them by, civil servants and things like that, and so the exercise in becoming a politician was just an exercise in vanity, in stepping into one of these roles where you become one of these scripted people.
Yeah. So why haven't the Conservatives? I mean, they could. They've got the same power as Labour. Why haven't they used it to claw back?
And that's the thing, that the press, the BBC, and those kind of things turn against you when you say we want the power to set interest rates or something like that, or we want to, and so from the left point of view, it sounds good that these things are independent, but actually independent means completely unaccountable to the electorate, and so it's you need that boldness of saying, we're going to tear this down, we're going to cut this down, we're going to reduce this to nothing, kind of thing. And I find that with code, in my job, it's that a lot of the time you have to take a decision. Are you going to rewrite something, or it's quite hard to remove code once somebody's written it? You don't understand what it does. It's always safer to leave it there. And so if you go into government and these bold things like saying we're going to get rid of GCTS, we're going to get rid of, we're going to shut down the Department of Education in Washington, and we're going to start up a new one in Texas or something like that. That those are the kind of massive things that you need to do. There's clearly people that would not be happy about that, and you need to understand what you're doing as well.
The Family Party list of organisations to abolish is very substantial, by the way. So we were onto this sort of way of thinking a long time ago. But there must be probably 20 on our list that we would just get. To be fair to the Conservatives, they did abolish GTC, General Teaching Council in England. And they just maintained its core functions of like regulating the profession, striking teachers off. Basically, they just retained that core function as part of the education department. But our policy is to do away with a lot of things. So, let's go. We're on a roll here with these. These Trump things. Let's go for one other. Trump coin. Have you invested in Trump coin today?
I've not invested in Trump coin, and that's another thing which is not great, isn't it? When before the election, obviously if he does this when he's in office, it's a complete conflict of interest, and so launching that a couple of days before you go into office, he launched a meme coin called Trump coin, and it went to 15 billion in value. I think since he's been inaugurated, it's gone down 30% or something like that. And it's basically, for those investing in it, it's gambling, unless you were right in at the beginning of it or something like that, and it kind of reminds me that, that's something of who Trump is. He's a person who set up lots of casinos. He's a tycoon. And I'd expect in the Trump presidency that various members of his family will be making money in various ways, which are, related to things that are happening.
So a Trump coin, this has obviously got no inherent value.
Yeah.
So people, the only reason it's got value is because people are willing to buy it. A lot of people are willing to buy it because they think it's a way of expressing solidarity with Trump, or they don't really understand what they're doing. They think they're like investing in Trump.
Like a meme coin, I think people understand that it has no value, and so it's basically that you're gambling on the popularity of a concept. So it's a bit like betting on a horse or something. That you're saying, I think this is a popular concept, and more people stick money on that stack of money, and if it keeps going up and up and up, and then somebody decides now I want to remove money, and then it goes down and down and down, and so the meme coins are more of a game than a, gaming, I'd say.
But when you're betting on a horse,
yeah,
whether the horse wins the race or not doesn't depend on how many people bet on it. I know that you might win might depend on it. So the sole driver of the value of this coin is just how many people buy it. So it's got no relationship with anything apart from how many people. So while more people are getting into it, while more people are buying it, the value will be going up. If at a stage now, it seems to be more people are selling it, the value is going to go down. But that's all it is. Virtually every other sort of transaction, there's some link to something in the real world under there, some sort of provision of goods or services or something or other. But with this, it's just
the link is to
there.
the value of the meme, I think, in terms of like the people are saying, how much is this concept worth? How much support do we think this thing has? And that's say.
So how does Trump profit from it?
So I think when they make the coins, they will have all been sold for the same price. And so he launches the coin. And when it was first launched, people would see the dollar Trump coin. And at first people didn't know if it was genuine or not, because anybody could launch a coin called dollar Trump coin. And so people assumed that it's just something a member of the public has launched or something like that. Eventually he tweets and he says, I've launched this to mark, the coming presidency or whatever, and at that point it goes wild and everyone wants to buy it. But there'd be an initial price on these coins. But basically anybody who knew it was genuine in that period before everyone knew it was genuine could buy up large amounts of this coin at a cheap price. And so Trump would get the initial value of each coin or whatever, or whoever was running it, would get the initial value. So say people had to buy each one for £1 at the beginning. I don't know what they costed at the beginning, but probably some relatively low price. But the real winners would be people who knew this was genuine at the point it costed £1 and bought loads of it and watched it go up, tenfold. I think it went up tenfold or something like that. So
how much has Trump made from it?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's certainly not 15 billion, because the moment somebody takes money out, that 15 billion just represents what the last person paid for a coin, multiplied by the number of coins there are.
Yeah, but Trump's not going to get that. Trump's only got the original sale price, so we don't know what the
original sale price, and perhaps others that knew about it were able to buy large sums at a cheap price.
Okay, it's just worth a try. So, everyone, would you buy a family party coin if we launched one?
No.
It could help party funds.
No.
I mean, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, if someone had talked about this, we'd have to go say 30 years ago, would it just be incomprehensible? Or would there have been some equivalent thing?
I think it's obvious that the coin would make a lot of money in terms of that. People weren't buying it because they were passionate about Trump. They were buying it because they thought a lot of people are passionate about Trump. And a lot of people are passionate about it. But for me, it feels like an abuse of your supporters to a certain extent to launch it.
No, we won't do that. Okay, sorry everyone that the family party coin is cancelled. Our ethics advisor has turned us away from that. So yeah. Okay, right. Having spoken earlier on about the need to focus on Scottish issues, we spent most of the time talking about America, but let's bring a few things in just to finish. Let's get back to the beginning. Right, first of all, I committed my routine live stream sin last week, and that is putting something in the title and then not talking about it in the live stream. So we will catch up. Andrew Tate has launched a political party called the Bruv Party, and as I'm sure most of you are familiar with Andrew Tate. So he's given some like hard-hitting speeches of the drastic action he's going to take to sort the country out. And my take on this, continuing a theme, is I'm 99% confident that this is a money-making scheme. That he will get people interested, get them signed up in some way or another, and then we'll be asking for donations to it. Because I think a lot of what he does seems to be a money-making scheme. So, yeah, but you're not going to desert to the Bruv Party, are you?
Not planning that, no.
I mean, will he get a lot of people signing up in Britain? I don't know.
We'll have to see. It's
I think it's such a big figure. He'll probably get a few thousand, but I'm pretty sure soon he'll be selling merchandise to them. He'll be selling T-shirts and whatever, and we'll be making money out of it one way or another. So anyway, that was that. What else has been going on? This is an important one. So the Saturday coming, 7 p.m., we're going to be in front of the Parliament with our 18,000 lights. That's 1,000 there. And those 1,000, they're not displayed very well. They're a bit piled up on top of each other. So 18,000 is going to be quite a sight. So we're gathering there. We're going to take some photographs of these lights displayed in various ways. A couple of speeches, some silent reflection, maybe get a drink somewhere afterwards to warm up. So you'll be very welcome to join us Saturday evening, 7 p.m. In front of the Scottish Parliament. If you're going to come, it'd be good if you could make it, by 7 p.m. because we'll get arranged and things. So if you do arrive late, that might be a little bit suboptimum, shall we say. But if you could come along just 7 till 8, we would love to see you. We're not expecting it to be like a mass gathering, but a good few people there in the pictures will be good. So look out for that. Phil, you're helping out with that, aren't you? We're trying to work out how to arrange these lights.
Yeah, and each light represents, it's the abortion statistics, one light for every life taken each year.
Yes, I forgot to mention that vital information about it. So that's Saturday evening. Now, this was just earlier on today. I think a terrible story reported in the Scottish Sun. I think the woman had been charged for basically murdering a man. And it just made me think, could gender-based violence, there's always talk about gender-based violence. And whenever a man attacks a woman, kills a woman, gender-based violence, we need special policies, committees, laws, etc. But when it's the other way around, which is not, it's not infrequent, it's not some sort of freak incident when a woman attacks or kills a man, it does happen reasonably regularly, then suddenly that's not gender-based violence. And I'd love to ask some people who take this line, I'd love to ask them to explain about it, how that works. I mean, what would they say, Phil?
I'm not sure.
Maybe like the question I said from a woman's hour.
Yeah, silence.
Yeah. Right, Stephen, good point. With the 18,000 lights are going to be installed away on Saturday, the 1st of February. So look out on our social media for the exact location for those. So, yeah, that'd be good. And they are going to travel around the country a little bit. Now, this was an article in the Conservative Woman website. It's quite a popular website. And it picked up on our policy of opposing the drug consumption rooms. And the author, who was Patrick Phillip, who's, he mentioned the family party here and there in his articles. He writes for The Spectator, as in Conservative Woman, a few other publications as well. So it said, north of the border, only the Scottish Family Party have wholeheartedly and robustly opposed drug consumption rooms. They put it like this, and he quotes from our policy: safer consumption rooms will, in the longer term, lead to more drug abuse, more drug deaths, and more fear, hurt, injury, loss, and death among the law-abiding citizens who cross their path. So it's nice to get a mention there. But it made me think, are we the only party opposing this. For example, what's Reform's policy? I mean, Nigel Farage is for decriminalising drugs. Reform isn't. But Nigel Farage personally is. I don't think the Conservatives oppose the drug consumption room. I don't think. Do Reform? I don't know. I mean, this would expose. It's been in the social conservatism and the cultural conservatism, or the libertarianism as well in some more right-wing parties who'd be quite happy with that. So what would your guess be? Would Reform be opposing these
I think if Farage is pro-cannabis, then it's unlikely this is a big thing for them.
No.
You know, that they might see it as an issue of conscience or something like that, you know. And I think, you know, maybe even for some socially conservative people, like there'd be people who agree with us on most things, but they might say, because of their experience in dealing with drug addicts and things like that, they might say, actually, it might be okay. You know, I wouldn't say that myself. You know, I'd go down the line of thinking it's not good.
I would say the error people are making there is they're just thinking of the person in front of them.
Yeah,
they're thinking what would help this person from this point onwards, which is not the primary question, I think, for in politics. Is how do you prevent people getting into this situation? Now the author, he lives in Japan. And he was saying, obviously, there's virtually zero drug abuse in Japan. And the reason is because there is absolutely zero tolerance of it. I mean, you can experiment with a drug as roughly as a teenager, and that can ruin your life. But the consequences are so drastic. So it just doesn't happen. But I think in the UK media, you don't really hear about those stories. You don't get a BBC journalist going to Japan interviewing people, say, well, how have you solved the problem here? I mean, whether somewhere that's decriminalized or got consumption, I mean, the BBC will be all over them with documentaries. You know, well, what's the secret of your success? But the countries where they really are successful and there is virtually no drug problem tend to be the countries where they're just really hard line and they basically crush it. And many lives are saved, families, etc. A huge amount of harm's prevented. I think there's something to learn from it there. Right, what else has been happening? Oh, this is one of Trump's executive orders. This was good stuff. Executive order established government-wide the biological reality of two sexes and clearly defines male and female. All radical gender ideology, guidance, communication policies and forms are removed. This is like family party policy, in that no agents of the government, no agency of the government will show any regard for gender ideology. It just won't be given the time of day, won't be included or accommodated in any way at all. It will just be cut out of the government's business. So if people want to form their own clubs or campaigning groups or call each other what they like, then sort of fair enough. But the government's not going to go along with this at all. And the interesting thing with this, I think, there's in America, there's no Gender Recognition Act. There's no overall legal method of a man becoming a woman. There might be, say, in one state, there'd be a way you can get it changed on your driving license. There'll be another way you can get it changed on some other document. But then in the state next door, maybe you can't, or it's a different way to do it. So it's not something where like changing one law makes a dramatic change, because it's all piecemeal. But in the UK, as we always say, it just comes back to the Gender Recognition Act, because the law says that a man can become a woman, and that would need pulling. If that law was in America, Donald Trump would say he'd be repealing it. I'm sure that would be in this list, because his attitude is, it's like we say, pull the thing up by its roots, lock, stock, and barrel.
And so I think those things are good because it says this is possible, Yeah. And I think to an extent, like, Trump, he does bold things, that he's got past the point of caring too much what people who oppose the things are going to say. And so that's one of the good sides there, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was good. Well, this is a little story. I think it's escaped most people's attention. It's just a tweak to the guidance for religious observance and religious and moral education in schools. Religious observance in most Scottish schools, maybe not Catholic schools, but in most Scottish schools, religious observance is just like a time for reflection. It's a secular assembly. It's probably more likely to have a sort of progressive, liberal, secular message rather than anything remotely Christian or religious. But it is still called religious observance. I think it's one of those things where they basically wanted to scrap it, but instead of having the controversy of we're stopping religious observance, they said, we'll still call it religious observance, but obviously what goes on is naturally going to be that. Anyway, but the change is that some parents want to withdraw their children from it, from both of those things, which I think is understandable. You might think that what goes on in assemblies is out of kilter with the values of one's family. That might be a perfectly reasonable conclusion. And in terms of religious and moral education as well, if your worry is that the teacher's presenting that from a perspective that you're not happy with, or you don't like the content of the curriculum, then okay, parents should be able to withdraw their kids. But the change is to allow children to overrule their parents. So the parent might say, we don't want you going to religious observance. We know what's in it. It's completely out of line with our values. So we're withdrawing you. But then the school would say to the child, do you want to overrule your parents and go in any case? And you can imagine how they could manipulate that decision. And obviously this is under the banner of children's rights. Children have got the right to basically choose what they want to do and not do. And this is exactly the same situation they created with sex education as well. Parents have got the right to request to withdraw their children from sex education, but children have got the right to overrule it if they want to. So, yeah, it's just a bit more erosion of the rights of parents coming in there, fairly under the radar. It's not a huge deal, but it's another little step in the wrong direction, I would say. Anything to chip in on that one, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I got a vaccine request through the school or through the NHS for my child. On there, you've got to consent to getting the vaccine for your child. And then it says, but your child can overrule this. And so you need both the child and the parents to tick and to sign for it. And so it's kind of like, what's the point in this? What does it mean when you tick it and sign it or not?
And just the dynamic of, because it's also the child defined the parent. It's not just that the school is defined the parent, it's inviting the child to defy the wishes of the parent as well, which I think is totally wrong. Yeah. But anyway, par for the course in Scotland. This is just in England, they're introducing a thing where home educated children have to go on a register. And you can obviously see what that's going to lead to. It's going to lead to councils, etc., inspecting the quality of education. And you know where that's going to go. You know what they're going to look for. You know what they're going to say, oh, we're not happy with this because. So it's basically tightening the net a little bit on home education, making it more difficult to do, more state involvement, more opportunity for the state to judge home educators according to the state's values. And this is coming in Scotland as well. They've been talking about it in Scotland for years. So that is not good. Right, we're up. I'll save the others till next time. We've talked about quite a few things there. Let's leave that one there. Right, thank you very much for your comments. We got quite a few on screen, so I hope that was interesting. I've got about a live stream's worth of material left over, so maybe I'll go live later in the week. Maybe on Thursday or Friday night, might do it as well. So hopefully, if you're around on Facebook or YouTube or X, then you'll be able to join us. But yeah, thanks for watching, Phil. Nice to have you on again. That's very interesting material. I will see you next week, if not before, or maybe see you on Saturday at the Parliament. Right, good night.
Bye.